You're listening to Pro Talk Wrestling with NateFNGreat. What is up, you guys? This is NateFNGreat. Welcome to the Game Changer Podcast, Pro Talk Wrestling Edition for Wrestlemania weekend, as well as Raw and Smackdown. I am indeed NateFNGreat. You'll probably notice that I'm still kind of battling a little bit with the cold. A little bit of a story behind that. I'll get into that more, as well as one of my worst experiences that I had when I talk about WrestleMania. But WrestleMania weekend as a whole was honestly one of the most memorable and unforgettable experiences that I've ever had. I absolutely loved it. It was all the way from, for me, it was from Wednesday of last week all the way until Monday morning when I returned back home here in Wisconsin. I've got the chance to watch Raw and Smackdown these last couple of days, so I'm looking forward to talking about that. Also, guys, just got to talk about WrestleMania and NXT Takeover as a whole. Really good stuff. So let's just not waste any time. But actually, before I get into that, I also want to say that I am going to talk a little bit about some of the other things that took place this past week, mainly the Rant Gala, the Fourth Wall Tailgate Party, as well as WrestleCon tomorrow on the edition of The Game Changer with myself and VictoriBelle. I'll get into that more tomorrow. But yeah, as for this, let's talk about some wrestling. We had NXT Takeover New York that took place in the Barclays Center, even though it more was, NXT Takeover Brooklyn 5, but they just decided to change the name for some weird reason. I don't understand. I still don't, to this day, understand why they just called it New York instead of Brooklyn 5. It's one of those things that was just going to bug me for quite a while. But getting more into that, we actually had the $1 million WWE 2K19 challenge, in which AJ Styles took on this random guy. I don't know exactly who he was. Didn't really catch his name, but the kid who got the $1 million entry was down to 4 they had. He was down to 1. He defeated AJ Styles. He won $1 million, and he was acting like a real heel, I will say that. He really made for a absolutely memorable night, to be honest. But it is not going to be the most memorable moment of the entire night, because we'll definitely have to talk about that right now. So here we go. Talking about first matchup on the card was the NXT Tag Team title matchup. We had the War Raiders defending against Aleister Black and Ricochet. First of all, still very much enjoy the whole War Raiders entry deal. Basically, they have drummers out. They come up from a secret passageway on the entryway. It looks just so cool seeing that. The smoke is a really good effect. It was just one of my favorite entrances in all of NXT takeovers. It might even be one of my favorite entrances in all of wrestling, period. Match itself was honestly one of those things that I cannot do it fair justice to just, call these moves, play by play. You definitely need to go watch this, because this is one of those matches that I will say is a match of the year candidate. I dare say that it was even better than the tag team title match that took place at Impact Homecoming between LAX and the Lucha Brothers. I also loved the chemistry that these guys had, because basically you have Aleister Black and Hanson battling against each other. They told a really good story, and then you also had the big man Rowe, I should say, taking on Ricochet. And that was kind of like the story that was going on here. It was kind of like Hanson and Black. They had kind of like this equal amount of chemistry between the two of them, and with Rowe and Ricochet, it was basically the power game versus the high speed, fast paced lucha style. And honestly, you would be very surprised on what things just happened during that. We even got to see Rowe actually pull out a couple of great athletic moves. I mean, my God, it just was one of those things where these teams are basically just saying, hey, you can do this. Well, I can do this. It's like a game of one-upsmanship in the best way. One of my favorite moments of that entire matchup was a moment at the beginning of the show, actually at the beginning of the matchup, in which we had Hanson and Black, they're battling against each other, and Black actually has his foot, on the side of the face of Hanson, and it was just a really unique symbolism, because I thought of it as kind of like, two knights battling against each other, and then we have the one knight who literally has a sword right by the guy's head, basically saying, I could kill you right now, but I'm not going to. It's so well done. I absolutely loved it. A lot of very close near falls, very close to the point where I thought that we were going to have new tag team champions. Ricochet, to close out the matchup, he went for the 630 splash, but he missed. We had the War Raiders finish off Ricochet with their tag team. I think it was the backbreaker into a leg drop deal. Brutal and devastating move. That picks up the victory for them. War Raiders retain, and after the match is over, we see Aleister Black and Ricochet. They are just in the ring, just basking. They are just listening to the NXT crowd. Absolutely just appreciate all their efforts. Some fans were chanting, please don't go, please don't go. Others were just absolutely they were just very happy to see these guys really lay it out all on the line. It was just a very, very well done matchup. As far as the rating for this, I give this one a solid A. It was a very good matchup, told a very good story, and I will not lie, it was one of those matches that really set the pace for the rest of the show, and it would only get better. It really would. It was just absolutely fantastic. Next matchup on the card is for the North American Championship, as we had Velveteen Dream taking on Matt Riddle, the master of the bro. Velveteen Dream actually had one of the best entrances. He came out a little bit like the Statue of Liberty, and then he had 4 guys basically take him to the ring on a bit of a throne. And the match itself was a spectacle, to say the least, because you have a UFC guy battling against a guy who is the most over person on NXT, period. And they just put on one hell of a deal. There is actually a moment during the matchup where Matt Riddle is getting some of the offense on Velveteen Dream, and people started booing him. And I'm still kind of confused as to why they were. Maybe it was because of the fact that Riddle was playing a little bit dirty. Maybe it was due to the fact that he was being a little more aggressive for their liking. He definitely seemed a little bit heelish. I mean, there's even a point where he, looked into the audience. He's kind of got this look of bewilderment where he's just kind of amazed that the fans are kind of turning against him. A lot of really great deals. There came a point where Matt Riddle thought he had the advantage with his submission mover. Velveteen Dream is able to counter into a pinning predicament to pick up the victory. Another matchup that I can only do so much to give it the kind of deal. It's another one of those matches that is definitely going to be a highlight of the year. First time meeting between these guys, and it just absolutely burned the house down. It was just absolutely wonderful. Velveteen Dream retains the NXT North American Championship, and Matt Riddle suffers his first loss. And I definitely tweeted throughout the night that I'm very curious to know the extent of the anger as well as the frustration that probably came out for Rant with Ant as well as Phil, who both are huge on Matt Riddle. Matt Riddle is a very good friend of theirs, so it's kind of one of those things where, I think personally they kind of were a little bit hurt by that, but professionally it was one of those things where it was a great matchup, so I don't think they can be too mean about it. Rating wise, I give this an A-. I liked it. I liked the fact that these guys told a really good story. I love the fact that these guys definitely had a very diverse moveset between the two of them. They definitely gave you guys something really good to enjoy. You had, Velveteen Dream playing to the crowd. A lot of times you had Matt Riddle just focusing on beating the hell out of Velveteen Dream, which is honestly, I think, the best way to show off Matt Riddle. He did an absolutely fantastic job. Has nothing to be ashamed of. Loving what they're doing with Matt Riddle. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with him when he comes up to the main roster. Up next, we have the much-anticipated matchup for the UK Championship. Pete Dunne defending his title, defending his title streak, you could call it, against Walter. The storytelling in this matchup is very much on a different level. And I will say that these guys definitely told an incredible story. They had a lot of build-up moments with Walter trying to get a chop on Pete Dunne, but Pete was able to counter quite a few times. We had Pete trying to break the fingers of Walter, but Walter's able to just overpower him. It's basically a story of skill versus strength. And these guys definitely just laid it all on the line. We see these guys just absolutely destroy each other. In the matchup, we see, Pete Dunne trying to hit, his signature move, the bitter end, but Walter's able to counter it. He's just taking Pete Dunne to his limit and vice versa. Finally, we see the bitter end on Pete Dunne for a very close 3 count, and then we see Walter take the advantage and pin Pete Dunne to end Pete Dunne's historic reign as the WWE United Kingdom champion. Walter is your new champion, and he definitely earned that title after that performance against Pete Dunne. It's going to be absolutely very insightful to see who is going to dethrone Walter. It's going to just be crazy. I don't even know how to even... I don't even know who I would pick. It's going to be just... It's going to be hard. It's really going to be hard. I gave this matchup a solid A. Again, the storytelling does a great job. The wrestling was very well paced. Loved every single bit about it. Fans were definitely into it. They were cheering for Walter. They were cheering for Dunne. It's just absolutely a great matchup between these guys. And it's probably one of the greatest highlights of the UK Championship. And now think about this, that we have only our third WWE United Kingdom champion in Walter, because the first one was Tyler Bate, second one was Pete Dunne. Now we have Walter. It's going to be very interesting to see how the landscape is changed for NXT UK in the forthcoming weeks. Next matchup we have on here is the Fatal 4-Way matchup for the NXT Women's Championship. Shayna Baszler defending against Io Shirai, Bianca Belair, and Kairi Sane. I will say this, that I think that what made this matchup very much enjoyable, as well as very much a spectacle, is the story that was being told during the matchup between Kairi Sane and Io Shirai. Because we heard in previous weeks how Io and Kairi, they were just, going to say, we both want the NXT title. We'll definitely, be friends afterwards. But when it comes down to it, we're definitely going to know the fact that we're going to be squaring off head-to-head, and the better person will win. It's one of those stories that you really kind of wanted to see what would happen in this matchup. And it definitely paid off in the best way. It was so well done. I also loved that there was a couple moments where Io and Kairi, they were trying to get covers and their partners were breaking it up. The one that stood out was the first minute attempt by Io Shirai, and I think it was Bianca. She tries to cover Bianca, 1, 2, Kairi breaks it up, and Io just has this face of just like, did you really just do that? I thought we were friends. It's just one of those things where you watch it and you just feel the emotion. These guys are definitely there to have fun, but they're also there to win the title. It's just so very well done. I loved everything about this. Bianca had some really good spots. Shayna Baszler, I think, was probably the meh person in this one, because I really look at her performances And they're not really one of those things where I say that she absolutely sucks. No, she's good. Just not one of those things where it's like a good, impressing me kind of good. But Bianca Belair is definitely a woman who is going to take the women's division by storm when she gets called up to the main roster. Absolutely wonderful performer. Io Shirai, Kairi Sane, they are going to just absolutely change the landscape. They're going to be game changers when it comes to the women's division. Guarantee it. We might even see them come up to the main roster next week. You never know. We got the superstar shakeup. But we'll have to wait and see. The end of the matchup took place with Io Shirai and Kairi Sane getting taken out by Bianca Belair. And then we see Shayna Baszler lock in her submission maneuver on Bianca. And Bianca unfortunately has to tap out. Shayna Baszler picks up the victory. I give this one a B+. It was a really good matchup, but it was just not one of those matches that really kind of took my interest. I think that if we had, Bianca, Kairi, or Io pick up the victory, I would have probably given this a higher grade. But I think that just because they kind of went with the safe bet and went with Shayna, kind of affected my decision. But it wasn't one of those things where I said it was a horrible match. No. I will say this. I think out of all the matches on the card, if I had to pick one that was kind of the worst or the weakest, it would probably be the four-way matchup. Because you just had so many great matches beforehand that they just were not quite up to par when it comes to battling the first three matches, and then had to be basically almost the bathroom break. I mean, there were some people that probably wanted to save up their energy for the main event, but it was just one of those matches where I didn't think it was, that interesting enough. But I think that we'll definitely see a lot of changes in the women's division in the future. All right, now time to talk about the main events. Johnny Gargano taking on Adam Cole, baby, for the NXT Championship in a 2 out of 3 falls matchup. The way you win is that you have to beat your opponent twice in this matchup. Now, if there's a tie, you go into the third fall. This was honestly a really good matchup. Definitely better than what I would have ever expected from Gargano and Adam Cole. First time these guys are battling against each other for the NXT Championship, they tore the house down. This is honestly, I'm going to tell you right now, this is an A+ match. Just giving that out of the way right now. Loved the storytelling here where Adam Cole is trying to win the title because he wants to prove that he's the best. Same with Johnny Gargano. He's basically believes that he's been robbed of the opportunity, I guess you could say, of closure between him and Tommaso Ciampa. But he still wants to be, Johnny Champion, we'll say. First fall happened after a very long-winded matchup. We see Adam Cole beat Johnny Gargano with a knee to the back of the head for the first fall. Then the second fall would happen a few minutes later, I would say maybe like 5 minutes later, with Johnny Gargano locking in I think it was the Gargano escape, if I'm not mistaken. Then we had the final fall between the two guys, and they just laid it all on the line. And we thought that Johnny Gargano was going to pick up the victory, but the Undisputed Era got involved. They almost cost Johnny Gargano the matchup. Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish hit their tag team high-low deal, and unfortunately for them, it was not enough because Johnny Gargano kicked out. I also will say this, that during this matchup, we also saw Adam Cole hit a couple moves that Tommaso Ciampa would hit. So he hit the Happily Ever After double underhook facebuster on Johnny Gargano. He hit Johnny Gargano with a knee to the head. He hit a vicious knee to the back of the head. Only got a 2 count. Everything that he was doing was just mocking Gargano, and he was basically just saying, hey, I got your number, I got your number. But after getting rid of the Undisputed Era, we see Gargano locking in the Gargano escape, making Adam Cole tap out. Johnny Gargano becomes the new NXT champion. And what a celebration. Everybody was out of their seats. Everybody was just screaming. Everybody's just so happy. Candice LeRae came out celebrating with her husband. She was just so happy to see Johnny Gargano win that title. And just, it could not have ended any better. We see a final visual of Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae on the rampway, just celebrating with Gargano having the title. And we see the NXT logo, but it's not over yet. I lied. We see Tommaso Ciampa come out, and he has his neck brace. He comes over. He gives Gargano the biggest hug, and it's one of those things that it's so bittersweet because this was supposed to be the main event. It was supposed to be Gargano versus Ciampa at TakeOver. But unfortunately, we didn't get that. We don't get that matchup. Probably not for a while, depending on the prognosis of Johnny Gargano's neck, because we don't know. We don't know if this is going to be one of those things where he is, his career is over, or if it's going to be one of those things where he'll be back within maybe a year. But it's one of those things where I'm hoping that we do not hear that his, career is over, because I know that he's on borrowed time. But I think he's still got a few more matches left in him that can definitely be a part of wrestling history. But honestly, guys, like I said, this was the best way to end NXT TakeOver New York. Just that visual of Gargano holding the title, him and Tommaso Ciampa just hugging each other, and even Candice getting involved with that hug. Even after everything that Tommaso put them through, just the amount of respect that Ciampa has for Gargano overshadows that. It's just so well done. Obviously, guys, final grade for this, I give it a solid A. You definitely saw a lot of the great things that took place at TakeOver. You heard a lot of the great moments that took place here. It was just an absolutely fantastic event. Quite possibly one of the best TakeOvers of all time. I would dare say tying, at least, with, I think it was NXT TakeOver New Orleans. But this was one where every match was on point. Every match had a story. And every match had a finish that a lot of people were very happy with. Like I said, the weakest point of the entire event was probably the NXT TakeOver. Well, there was the NXT Women's title matchup. But other than that, all the matches were just on key, on point. Absolutely great. Alright, so I'm going to take a little quick commercial break. And then we're going to talk about the grandest stage of them all, ladies and gentlemen, that being Wrestlemania.
Check out the guys over at Eclectic Media Project. They bring you podcasts such as Musically Challenged. Whose podcast is it anyway? Want to hear something interesting? And their newest podcast, Page 3.14 News. Check them out on Podbean and iTunes at Eclectic Media Project, on their website at www.eclecticmediaproject.com. Check them out as they are the home with a little something for almost everyone.
You're listening to the Game Changer Podcast here on Spreaker.com.
What is up, you guys? Welcome to the Game Changer Podcast, Pro Talk Wrestling Edition, talking about WrestleMania weekend. It's finally time to talk about the grandest stage of them all, the 35th anniversary of WrestleMania. Now, I will definitely have this posted up on the episode's picture there. You'll definitely see where we were kind of sitting for this event. Unfortunately, we missed out on a bit of a few things because of the fact that there was a structure in the way. There was like this pole that was there. It hurts a lot of things. And it wasn't the only thing, you guys. So I think I want to get the negatives out of the way first. So some of the negatives that are definitely coming out of WrestleMania were the fact that it had a 7.5 hour long, playing time. So that dragged quite a bit. There were some matches that you thought like, it didn't need to be here. This is like a Raw matchup. There was also a couple points during the event where some people in a certain spot of the arena actually got blinded by the lights that were going on there, and there were people that were just missing out. And this happened mainly during the Randy Orton versus AJ Styles matchup, which I think was the second or third match on the main card. So they missed out on quite a really good matchup between these two guys. And Randy Orton actually went on social media to apologize on behalf of WWE for what happened with that. So, first of all, spot on Randy Orton for actually having a heart and actually not being a dick, or dick hands, as I like to call him, and really just going out there and realizing that this was a bit of an issue. And there have been a lot of other podcasters that have mentioned the fact that, there's all these issues that are going on with WrestleMania now. They need to address them. They need to, get them out of the way. There were some points where the crowd was not into certain matches. This happened on the very, very top row of the MetLife Stadium arena, where they had the top row was doing a wave because I think they were either bored or they just didn't care about a matchup. I think it was maybe about 3/4 of that top row were doing it, but then the rest of the quarter was just like, nope, we're cool, and they got booed for it, which is stupid, because if they want to focus on the wrestling match, that's their deal, that's their choice. But if everybody else is just that bored of matches, then why do you come to WrestleMania? This is not a concert. This is not those things where you have that freedom to do this kind of stuff. You pay attention to the wrestling, and that's why I didn't do like tweets or I didn't do anything about WrestleMania during that, because I wanted to enjoy the experience. I wanted to be in that moment to see a lot of these matches take place, to see a lot of these deals happen, and I was not disappointed. I will go on a limb to say that this is one of my favorite WrestleManias of all time. And you know what? We got to go right into it. So, first matchup on the pre-show was actually Tony Nese versus Buddy Murphy. This was a pretty good, stellar matchup between the two of them. For me, I was very surprised with the outcome, because there were a lot of people that were probably thinking like, "Oh, Tony Nese, he's going to win." I was under the impression that Buddy Murphy would continue going, be the Cruiserweight Champion for a little while longer, but boy was I wrong. The only thing that I really didn't like about this matchup was the finish, but I'll talk about that in just a bit, because Murphy hit the Murphy's Law on Tony Nese. It looked like we were going to have a 3 count, but Tony Nese is able to get his foot on the bottom rope, definitely showing that they are protecting that move, which is great, because that does mean that there's some finishers that do need to be protected, and it made the matchup even more compelling. So the finish was, I'm trying to remember. Tony Nese, I think he hit his signature running knee on the corner of a seated Buddy Murphy, and that was it. I know that there's been a lot of people that have said that they hate the whole, striking finishers and stuff like that. There's a point where striking finishers, I get it. I'm a big fan of, the moves like, the Superman punch, the bull hammer, the clothesline from hell, those kind of moves. But if it's something in the corner, that's where it's kind of like, no. Like if it's like a top rope hanging DDT, that I could see being a finisher. That I could see. But him just doing like a Mojo Rawley-like deal, it was really weird for me. I give this matchup a solid B. Tony Nese getting the Cruiserweight title was definitely an upset for me, but it was also one of those things where it's like, okay, this is kind of cool. They definitely did put on a really good matchup for that. Put on a good matchup. Loved everything that they did. It was a good match to start off. Next up, we have the WrestleMania Women's Battle Royal, in which we had only 17 women competing, obviously, because a lot of the women were competing later on that night, either for the women's title or for the women's tag team titles. But a couple people that were inserted into this matchup were Candice LeRae as well as Kairi Sane. they were involved in this, and they had some really good performances. I was kind of surprised that we didn't get like an Asuka, Kairi Sane team up, because I think that would actually be kind of cool to have Asuka get Kairi Sane and Io Shirai involved. Maybe they have like a little faction there. That'd be kind of cool. Nothing really too spectacular about this matchup, although I will say the fact that it was Sonya Deville, Sarah Logan, and Asuka were seemingly the final three, and I will say seemingly, and explain why in just a bit. So, when we saw Sonya Deville get eliminated by Asuka, Sarah Logan eliminated Asuka, it was one of those moments where I thought, wow, they did it on Sarah Logan. They're pushing her to be a little bit harder. But then we see Carmella get in the ring, and I was like, wow, she didn't get eliminated? Okay. Carmella would end up hitting a super kick on Sarah Logan to eliminate her. And we see Carmella is the new, well, I guess you could say new, the winner of the Women's Battle Royal. I give this one a C. I'll stick with a C. I think the match itself was just nothing too spectacular. Kind of surprised at how they kind of had Sarah Logan be a very dominant force in this matchup. I kind of like that they're trying to develop and breed new stars. That definitely does make for a very interesting deal. In the end, I'm not really too pleased with Carmella winning at WrestleMania, but I'm not going to complain because she is kind of an established name on the women's roster, so kind of one of those things where I'm just like, okay. Next matchup we have on here is the Raw Tag Team title matchup. Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder challenging the Revival. Again, nothing really too crazy about this matchup. I think it's kind of a bit of an average deal. Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder would beat the Revival to win the Raw Tag Team titles with a surprise roll-up on one of the members of Revival to pick up the victory and win the titles. Kurt Hawkins and Ryder are new tag team champions. Again, giving it a C. It's one of those things where nothing really too spectacular happened. I guess I'll give it a C plus just because they did finally conclude the storyline with Kurt Hawkins where he could never win a match. He could never win a matchup. Well, now he's finally won a matchup. So I'll also say this. I'll give it that plus as well because this was actually Kurt Hawkins' idea. Instead of being the guy who could have beaten everybody, he's like, no, let's have me lose until we have a special reason to have me win. Because he thought of it. Well, he's a wise guy. He said it's basically one of those situations where like, yeah, I could win. The problem is you have to have something for me to go off of on that. So why not just have me lose until you have something that will kind of help reinvigorate my career? And this is a good step. So it's kind of cool. All right, the next matchup is the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. This was kind of more like the comedy deal. Braun Strowman was after the two guys from Saturday Night Live. Basically, we had the basic deals of blah, blah, blah. People getting thrown out here, people thrown out here. It came down to the two Saturday Night Live guys, as well as Braun Strowman, the Hardys. Hardys looked like they were about to eliminate Braun Strowman. The SNL guys actually were under the ring at the beginning of the matchup, and up until that moment, they hadn't been seen. They came out, they looked like they were going to eliminate Braun Strowman, but thankfully, Braun Strowman was able to fight back. He eliminated the Hardys plus the SNL guys. Braun Strowman wins the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. It was an okay deal. I give this one a C minus, just because of the fact that this was just one of those situations where the problem with it is that it was so much of a comedy deal than anything, and it's kind of a shame to see that because the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal was something about, creating new stars, but also, honoring the memory of one of the greatest giants that ever lived, Andre the Giant. Now it's just one of those things where it's like, it's a battle royal we have to do. Whatever. Absolutely hate it. All right, let's get to the main card, guys. We have, actually, before we get into the main card, we had a great singing for the national anthem. Then we get into the main show. Alexa Bliss, she comes out, talks about how she's the host and that she can really create memorable moments, which is a snap of her finger. And just like a Thanos snap, she brings out Hulk Hogan. Hogan comes out, makes a little joke about the Silver Dome, and then he corrects himself, calls it the Mets Life Arena or something like that. It was one of those things where it's like it was a noticeable misspoken deal that Hogan had. He does the whole "What you gonna do when Hulkamania, WrestleMania run wild on you?" Then they had the whole Hogan and Alexa Bliss doing like the poses. It's really kind of bizarre seeing that because Hogan literally just looks like a gargantuan of a man compared to Alexa Bliss, who literally looks like kind of one of the trophies for the WrestleMania Battle Royals compared. So it was still a cool moment though. And as Real American is playing while they're doing the posing, Paul Heyman comes out and he basically gets on the microphone and he says, "Well, unless we're closing the show, unless we're the main event, we're not going to perform out here. But you know something? I got a flight to Vegas for my client, so I'm going to tell you something right now. We're just going to get this matchup over with." So kind of a weird bipolar situation right there. He does his whole deal where he's like, the reigning, defending, undisputed Universal Champion, Brock Lesnar. Lesnar comes out. We get the Universal title matchup to start off the show. This shocked me legitimately. I didn't think that they were going to have this matchup early, but when we talk about the outcome, I understand why. So after that took place, we had Seth Rollins, Titantron, do a deal where he has a sword coming down, and it says Beast Slayer. Seth Rollins comes out, and he's ready for Brock Lesnar. Okay, scratch that. As soon as he got to the ring ropes, Brock Lesnar just goes after Seth Rollins, beats him down on the outside, F5. He slams Seth Rollins. He throws him into the announce tables. He's just beating the ever-living piss out of him until finally they get into the ring. Seth Rollins is just badly injured. Brock is just standing there like, ha, 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 I'm a smart man. And, referee calls for the bell. Ding, ding, ding. The matchup is underway. Suplex City, Suplex City, Suplex City. It looks like Brock Lesnar is going to finish off Seth Rollins with an F5. Seth is able to counter, pushes Brock into the referee, hits a low blow on Brock Lesnar, and then we get set up for the stomp. And I just want to preface this right now. In a weird way, I think I called this, and I think that Will from the Kings of the Ring podcast can definitely back me up on this. We see Seth Rollins hit one stomp, and then he goes a two stomps, and then a third stomp. 1, 2, 3. Brock Lesnar has been slain. Seth Rollins is the new Universal Champion, making history by winning the title at the beginning of a WrestleMania show. Whew! Boy, was that amazing. I give this matchup a solid B+. I would have given it a little bit higher, but I think the length of it kind of just made it a little bit... You know what? Screw it. It's my show. I'm going to give it an A-. I love the fact that it was just a short matchup. It wasn't too long. It was one of those things where people were just like, oh, this is stupid. It served a bit of a purpose, and I will tell you this, that when we go into talking about Raw, that Seth does acknowledge the fact that he did some underhanded tactics to win the title. But it's just one of those things where it's an awesome moment to see Brock Lesnar lose the title and Seth Rollins just having that moment of holding the belt on the ramp. He even does his little cyclone spinning the belt deal. It was just an awesome moment. Just absolutely wonderful. Next matchup we have on here is AJ Styles versus Randy Orton in what was a matchup that I was looking forward to. I thought it was going to be match of the night. Unfortunately, that was not the case. This was honestly a pretty stellar matchup between the two of them. Not their best. I think that their matchup a couple years ago, when they had that match on SmackDown, was a bit better. But, I mean, they told a really good story. Basically, Randy Orton trying to do like the RKO out of nowhere, but AJ Styles is able to either maneuver out of it, or he's able to see Randy Orton just flying in the air. I love those spots. Those are really cool. Randy Orton was also able to hit the RKO for a close 3 count. And then we see AJ Styles hit a phenomenal forearm on the outside, phenomenal forearm back in the inside for the 1-2-3. AJ Styles picks up the victory over Randy Orton. Matchup, so I give this one a solid B-. I think the only reason why I give it such a bit of a minus is because of the fact that it was just one of those matches where it was good, but it had so much more potential to be something amazing. So that's kind of how I see it. I still enjoyed the matchup. It was just one of those things where it's like, there's still a little bit more that they could have done with that. It's definitely above average, to say the least. Next up, we had the Fatal 4-Way matchup for the SmackDown Live Tag Team titles. The Usos defending against Aleister Black and Ricochet versus Rusev and Nakamura versus The Bar. Now, I said this beforehand on so many deals. Aleister Black and Ricochet do not deserve to go 0 for 3 during these week-long tag team title shots, but it is one of those things where I look back and I think to myself of a comment that I made where I said that you don't always need to be a tag team champion to be considered one of the greats, but it does help to kind of solidify that that legacy. So I think that Aleister and Ricochet are going to be tag team champions in the future. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case now. Honestly, it was a really good matchup between these 4 teams. They definitely demonstrated their tag team prowess. Even Nakamura and Rusev were really good. There are a couple points where I was surprised at how they were able to, adapt to their deal after only being a tag team for about 2 months now. And they still put on a pretty good matchup. The Bar is the Bar, which is amazing. The Usos are the Usos, which are amazing. Aleister and Ricochet were the stars of this matchup. No doubt about that. I dare you to fight me. The finish was just crazy because we literally had everybody hitting their finishers and their signatures. They just absolutely just balls to the walls, laid it all on the line. It was great. The Usos are able to pin Sheamus, though, after a double Uso splash for the 1-2-3 and retain their tag team titles. Solid B+ matchup. Loved the matchup itself. It was just really good. Like I said, the MVPs were Aleister and Ricochet. The Usos in the Bar, they put on a really great performance. And even Nakamura and Rusev, they were really good in the matchup too. So it comes as no surprise that greatness was rubbing off on all 4 of these teams. And they just work so well with each other. It's a chemistry that just cannot be replicated. And it was just a spark that really could not be extinguished when it came to this matchup. Next up, we have Shane McMahon versus The Miz in a Falls Count Anywhere match. I think that this is one of those matches where I kind of set myself up for a bit of a fall because I had such high expectations for this matchup, and I'm sure other people did too. This was a matchup that definitely lived up to the name of Falls Count Anywhere, which was good. That was very good. This is one of the first few times where we see a Falls Count Anywhere matchup ending anywhere that was not in the ring. But I think that there were just certain points where it was just kind of like... I guess a few points in here were that Shane McMahon kind of dominated throughout the early parts of it, got a couple shots on The Miz. It looked like he was going to do an elbow on Miz. And then Mr. Miz, Miz's dad, he basically stopped Shane from doing it. And then he does this like half-assed like fist up deal. It was just really, really weird. But then Shane McMahon was able to, beat down on Mr. Miz. Miz finally got some offense. Dominated Shane McMahon throughout the rest of this matchup. We see him, throwing him over the barricade, onto some of the equipment deals. There was even a spot where he threw him off of the, I think it was like a small roof there. He hit a golf cart and then fell down there. It was just one of those spots that was a little bit spooky. Then they kind of went on to like the scaffolding area where they had one of the hard cams. Miz is able to hit a superplex on Shane, I should say, to Shane through what looks like a tape. I don't know if it's a table spot or if there's like a matting or something like that. I don't know what that area was. Then we had a 1, 2, 3, and people are assuming, well, the Miz won. Arm goes up. Then we hear, "Here comes the money." Shane McMahon wins on a dusty finish. Somehow Shane McMahon was able to, while he was getting superplexed, get on top of Miz, or at least the back of his arm was on top of Miz for the 1, 2, 3. It was kind of very anticlimactic, but I understand why they did this. It's kind of one of those things now where we're continuing the story because it does need that satisfactory ending for Miz and Shane McMahon. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. So as far as match goes, I give this one a C-. It was one of those things where some of the cheesiness as well as the finish kind of hurt this matchup, but the physicality was good. I will say that. I just wish that they would have done something a little bit more with this matchup. It's one of those things where you expected more, and you feel underwhelmed that you didn't get that more. So that's kind of how I describe this matchup. Up next, we have the Fatal 4-Way matchup for the WWE Women's Tag Team titles as the Boston Hug Connection defend against Nia Jax and Tamina, Beth Phoenix and Natalya, as well as the Iconics. A pretty good matchup between these two. I will say this, that it does feel a lot like WrestleMania 20, where we talked about the 2 tag team matches for Raw and Smackdown. This kind of feels the same way. But there was no way that these two were going to, at all. There's no way that these teams were going to, touch the match that the SmackDown Live tag team titles did. But they did their best. I will give them that. They did their best. Nia Jax and Tamina were kind of out of the matchup for the majority of it. So it was kind of one of those things where it was just the Iconics, the Divas of Doom, as well as the Boston Hug Connection were kind of the workhorses of this matchup. Beth Phoenix looked absolutely great in this matchup. Natalya looked wonderful. Sasha and Bayley looked great. The Iconics even had some moments where, wow, they really, definitely were stars in this matchup. And Nia Jax and Tamina were Nia Jax and Tamina. Take that for what it's worth. The finish of the matchup was very interesting because I did not even consider until they showed the replay. And Beth Phoenix actually had Bayley on the top rope. She was hitting a super glam slam on Bayley, which was a brutal spot. Oh my gosh, that looked just absolutely rough. But Billie Kay actually made a blind tag to Beth Phoenix while this was all going on. So Peyton Royce threw Beth Phoenix out of the ring. Billie Kay covers Bayley for the 1, 2, 3. The Iconics win the tag team titles, and the crowd goes absolutely insane. Just wow. It's kind of one of those things where I was in shock that they won. The Iconics definitely picked up I wouldn't say a much-needed victory, but I would definitely say that they got a victory that they've needed to really cement their legacy. And they are now back as tag team champions, well-deserved. I can honestly not say anything horrible about it. Match itself, I think I would give this one I'm gonna give it a B. I'm gonna give it a B. It was a good matchup. Not as good as, say, the 4-way match for the SmackDown Live tag team titles, but all of these women definitely looked great, except for Nia and Tamina. So I think that's one of the other bonuses for this matchup. Like I said, and it had a shocking outcome, so it definitely delivered on that. Next matchup we have is the WWE Championship matchup. Kofi Kingston versus Daniel Bryan, the new Daniel Bryan. Easily match of the night. I give this one an A+. Getting spoil that right now. The storytelling here of Kofi Kingston overcoming so many odds to getting to this point was absolutely tremendous. The story itself in the match was just great because Kofi Kingston, he did everything he could, but Daniel Bryan was not going down, not going down. Bryan was doing everything good, but Kofi's not going down, not going down. Daniel Bryan just, yelling about him being a B-plus player. The stomps that he was doing on Kofi Kingston's head was just brutal, brutal, brutal. We also see, Kofi Kingston actually return the favor a little bit. In the end, we see Kofi hit a Trouble in Paradise on Daniel Bryan for the 1, 2, 3. Kofi Kingston, 11 years in the making, wins the WWE Championship on the 35th anniversary of WrestleMania. History has been made. The first ever African-American WWE Champion. Well deserved. I'm sure there's other people that probably think that Booker T or somebody else deserved it. Honestly, you guys, I am perfectly fine, perfectly grateful that we finally break the tradition of just all these random WWE champions. They either didn't make sense or they just were not there. We finally have somebody who worked his ass off and definitely deserved that moment. Kofi Kingston winning the title just is wonderful. I absolutely loved it. Like I said, A+. So this was going to be a hard matchup to. It was going to be a hard match to really, Jesus, a hard match to really, to top. It's going to be hard to top. We had Samoa Joe versus Rey Mysterio for the U.S. title. Not much to say about this matchup. We had Samoa Joe get a 619, then he locked in the clutch on Rey for the victory. It was like 30 seconds. It was like 1 minute. 1 minute was this matchup. That was it. Samoa Joe won. Give us one C+. Nothing really too spectacular, but it was enough to where it was just like it got the message through. Samoa Joe looks like a badass. It was great, and also, I think Rey was also injured during this point, so I think they were trying to keep things a little bit easier for him. We had Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre. A lot of people did not give a crap about this matchup. I liked this matchup. I think there was just maybe I think there were just some spots here and there that just didn't connect with the crowd as much. Roman Reigns was able to do the Superman punch and a spear for the victory, 1, 2, 3, picking up the win on WrestleMania. Solid C. Just one of those things where it was nothing really too spectacular. I was honestly hoping that Drew would hit the Claymore kick, but ended up not happening. Then we had, but I'm going through a lot of these matches because a lot of them don't really have that much to really talk about, to be honest. Triple H versus Batista, where it's a no-holds-barred matchup, and if Batista wins, then Triple H's in-ring career would be over. I think that this is one of the more negative matches that I had on this event. I'll explain why a little later on. But the entrances, first of all, for Batista and Triple H were very interesting because you had Batista, who came out in a couple. I think there were a couple of Lincoln Navigators, if I'm not mistaken. They came out. Batista came out. He's looking all revved up. He's just ready to go. There came a point. Oh gosh, when Batista first got into the ring, he actually fell. And it was one of those things that the internet has not forgiven him for. So definitely see a lot of memes when it comes to that. The Batista came around to kind of taunt the fans, and then he went in for a second time, but he walked in very slowly, so that way he didn't make the same mistake twice. Thought that was cool. Then we had Triple H's entrance, which was really weird. I think this might actually be his second worst, if not his worst entrance of all time. I'm saying second worst only because the Terminator one was bad at WrestleMania 31. But basically, I think he was doing like this road, like Mad Max Road Fury kind of deal, and then he had the motor deal. It was weird. It was just one of those things where it's like, how does this kind of fit? Triple H. How does this really work for him? He's kind of like in this biker thing, and it's weird. I just don't understand it. Match itself was definitely brutal. I will say that right now. This was probably the most brutal matchup of the entire night. And not because it was painful to watch. No, it was because you felt the pain that these guys were just putting each other through. Triple H did a couple moments where, he was either working on the legs, or he did a moment where he actually took a pliers and he pulled the nose ring out of Batista's nose. It was so brutal. It's just one of those things where I thought, did he just pull a tooth out? And somebody pointed out, no, it was the nose ring. It's like, okay then. That's intimidating. That's scary. Yeah, I was not expecting that to happen at all. Batista and Triple H were trying to send each other through the announcer tables. Neither one of them went through, so that makes things even more brutal for them. Then we had Batista able to hit, his Batista bomb. They actually replicated the moment with the Hell in the Cell match, where Triple H, he's got the sledgehammer. He looks like he's going to hit Batista in the head with it. Batista hits a power bomb for the close 3 count. Triple H hits a pedigree for a close 3 count. Then we had Ric Flair get involved. He actually hands off Triple H a sledgehammer, basically taunts Batista. Then Triple H does this Superman punch with the sledgehammer. Triple H hits a pedigree for the 1, 2, 3. And Batista has been slain. Triple H wins at WrestleMania. I just did not like the outcome of this, because I think that Triple H's days as a wrestler are dwindling down. I think that this would have been the best way for him to end it. That's just my opinion. Match itself, I give it a B minus, just because the brutality that they had, as well as just a couple of moments here and there, definitely made up for it. I will say that it's better than the Falls Count Anywhere matchup. It definitely does kind of give you more of an idea on the fact that Triple H still has a little bit left in him, but also Batista still had quite a bit left in him. So that was great. That was just great. Next up, we have Baron Corbin versus Kurt Angle. This was kind of like a Raw match kind of feel to it. Baron Corbin was able to hit the ends of days on Kurt Angle for the victory. This was exactly what I wanted to see, because Baron Corbin definitely deserved the victory. Now he's got these bragging rights of, hey, I ended Kurt Angle's career. What are you going to say now? Kurt Angle definitely gave a emotional farewell, as well as having us chant the you suck deal. It was a very emotional deal. I give this a C+, mainly because the plus is indeed the fact that this is Kurt Angle's last match, and it definitely does give it a little bit more of an edge. The match itself was nothing too special, unfortunately. Next up, we have the Intercontinental title matchup. We have the Demon Finn battling against Bob Lashley. Match itself, pretty interesting. I think that, it's definitely a prolonged, extended version of what we got from Finn and Baron Corbin at SummerSlam. But I think that they kind of condensed the matchup a little bit shorter. They also had Lashley have a couple of spots here and there where it was great. Finn Balor was able to hit the coup de grace to win the Intercontinental title. So we have a new Intercontinental champion. I give this one a B, because the match itself, yes, it was short, but at the same time, it was short enough to the point where it didn't feel like it was just going to prolong, and it wasn't going to be one of those things where it was going to be super draggy or whatnot. So, yeah, it was kind of good. All right, up next we have the main event for the Raw and Smackdown Women's Championships. Ronda Rousey versus Charlotte Flair versus Becky Lynch. Match itself was really good. The story itself was great. I think that there are a lot of people that are definitely a little bit distraught about this matchup because the ending was kind of botched up. But let's go into some of the highlights of this event. We had Charlotte definitely hitting a lot of her typical moves, like the moonsault, as well as the figure eight. And there's a moment that I thought was really cool, was that all the women got their submission moves in, and they all got broken up. It was just a really cool deal. We also got to see a great moment where Ronda locked in a double armbar deal, but Charlotte and Becky were able to fight out of it. It was just a really, really good chemistry between all three of these women. The ending is what really got a lot of people kind of like scratching their heads, but also at the same time, it's one of those things where at least it was kind of satisfactory. Ronda Rousey did not like this, but basically what ended up happening was that she was going for her Ronda slam deal, and Becky Lynch was able to counter that into a crucifix pin, and unfortunately Ronda's arm was up at the count of 1. But the referee still counted it the 1, the 2, the 3, and Becky Lynch winning the Women's Championship. This was one of those moments that was kind of confusing, but at the same time, it was just wonderful to see, because Becky Lynch, after so long, had finally gotten her comeuppance. She finally got everything that she had earned. It was great to see Becky Lynch winning the Raw and SmackDown women's titles. That visual of her holding both belts was great. Ronda and Charlotte were pissed. From what I've heard, the finish was actually supposed to be Charlotte tapping out to Becky Lynch just to make Ronda strong and keep her like undefeated per se. Ronda was not happy with the finish, and also the referee was fined because apparently that was not supposed to be the finish to begin with. So there's a lot of controversy and a lot of things that are going on with this finish. Match itself, I give this a B-, just because the finish is what kind of killed it for me. It's not the best main event of WrestleMania, but it is a matchup that is still going to be historic. I think the brutality that these women laid each other out with just really did show the testament of what the women's titles mean to them. And they did their best. They really did. And that is the one thing they can only ask for. It was just one of those situations where it was a controversial ending that should have been handled better. But unfortunately, that's not exactly what happened. So final grading for WrestleMania as a whole, I give this a solid B. For me, like I said, it's one of my favorite WrestleManias, if not my favorite of all time. Not only because of the fact that I was there, but also because of the fact that it was just a fun WrestleMania. Everything from, the tag team title match from SmackDown to even the Batista Triple H deal I enjoyed. Some of these matches definitely did not need to be on there. I think that if they trim the fat off of some of these matches here and there, I think Miz versus Shane McMahon didn't need to be on there. I'm trying to think of some. I think maybe a couple of the pre-show matches could have been taken off. I think Ryder versus Hawkins would have been better on Raw than on the pre-show, because it probably would have made the Raw show that much more special. But in all honesty, you guys, it's one of those things that I'm not going to really nitpick about it. It was still great to see, just absolutely fun time, and I will never forget it. So I will say this, that one of the things that sucked about WrestleMania was not actually during the show itself, was actually post-show, because we had to do, we were trying to get this Uber driver, and apparently from what was going on was that it was one of those situations where it seemed like he wanted us to come to him, which was not exactly how it was supposed to go. He was actually supposed to follow the E-lot and go into the color row, and then we kind of go from there. But unfortunately, that's not what happened, because stupidity, I guess you could say. I don't know what the heck was going on. Excuse me. I don't know what the heck was going on for that. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't also enjoy the fact that we were drenched from the rain that came about maybe during while we were waiting, and then this guy was just not helping us out at all. So I'm going to say this: if I ever go to New York, I'm going to make sure that I have the right person picking me up. I think I recognize his name. I don't know his name per se. But I definitely would not, go with him on an Uber again. I will say this, that a major shout-out goes out to Paul, who was one of the Uber drivers for this past weekend. He was a really cool guy. I got the chance to talk with him a little bit. I got the chance to kind of get his thoughts on the New Jersey area, the New York area. He kind of talks a bit about, some really good things. It was just a lot of fun. He was a really cool guy. Absolutely enjoyed talking with him. So out of all the people there, Paul was definitely one of those guys I enjoyed. So shout out to Paul in the New Jersey, New York area, Uber driver. He does a fantastic job. All right, so with that being said, I'm going to take another quick commercial break, and then when we come back, time to talk about Raw and SmackDown post-WrestleMania. And it was quite the eventful show, to say the least. But I'll get more into that when I get back. So, guys, stay tuned. Also, before I go into commercial break, there's still time, guys, to enter into the raffle, I guess you could say. Definitely give this a like, give this a share, and if you do that, be sure to also leave a comment in the section, in the Facebook section below, on who your favorite wrestler from Wisconsin is. You do that, you'll be entered to win tickets to the ACW Water City WrestleCon show coming up in just a few short weeks. It's going to be an absolutely can't miss event, to say the least. So stay tuned, guys. Be right back.
Hey guys, this is NateFNGreat. Hey, have you ever wanted to be a champion but can't seem to really find the money and the time to get a championship belt? Well, you know who's a really good friend of mine? AJ from AJsBelts.com. These guys have a large assortment of championship belts, from classic belts to the modern day belts to championship belts that you would not even believe. And guys, like I said, they work with you very well. With an awesome layaway program, there is no way that you can beat these guys' prices as well as these guys' deals, especially when you can give them a little bit of money every now and then until you can get that championship gold. Coming from a guy who's a champion and a game changer, I'm indeed NateFNGreat. I'm representing AJsBelts.com, proud friends of the Game Changer Podcast. You're listening to the Game Changer Podcast here on Spreaker.com.
Alright, welcome back to Pro Talk Wrestling, guys. This is NateFNGreat, WrestleMania edition here. And let's talk about Raw and SmackDown. And then I'm going to head on to get some rest from this damn cold. Jeez Louise. I mean, that's what happens when you're kind of out in the rain waiting for an Uber that's not exactly as reliable as you thought it would be. Anyway, I've already stated my rant about that. Let's talk about Monday Night Raw. Best way to describe this, guys, is that it was a great show with a shit finish, is the best way to describe this event. I mean, it started off really good. We had Seth Rollins come out. He talks about how he defeated Brock Lesnar and how he did some underhanded tactics to do it, but at the same time, he said that Brock Lesnar probably would have done the same thing. And it's true, though, just to be fair. He basically says that Brock Lesnar can stay in Vegas, and that he's going to be a fighting champion. Out comes Kofi Kingston, who makes the challenge to have a title-for-title matchup between the two of them. And it was an inspiration from the women's matchup at WrestleMania. So that was really cool that they kind of incorporated that, and they said, hey, that motivates us to see who was the best. And I'll definitely get into talking about that a little later on in the show. We had Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder. They defeated the Revival to retain their tag team titles. Nothing really too special about that matchup, but it was still really cool to kind of see that. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Revival now. We had Baron Corbin come out. He basically said that, I beat Kurt Angle, so therefore I should win a gold medal. Kurt Angle came out, and it looks like he wanted to congratulate Baron Corbin for beating him at WrestleMania last night. They kind of shook hands, and Baron Corbin, just mocking Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle hits the ankle slam. The ankle lock is locked in, making Corbin tap out. Kurt Angle's final appearance on Raw, per se. There is rumors that he has been signed as a producer, so probably won't be the last time you see Kurt Angle, at least within the future. But then out comes Lars Sullivan, who was supposed to debut months ago, but due to health issues as well as other certain backstage deals, he wasn't able to do it. But finally, he debuts on the main roster. He attacks Kurt Angle, leaves him laying out. And it's going to be interesting to see who is going to be a part of who Lars Sullivan chooses to be a part of, come either Raw or SmackDown. Alexa Bliss made her in-ring return, defeating Bayley in what was a pretty decent matchup. Becky Lynch, she comes out and she talks about how, she won the 2 titles, that she's very proud of the fact that she's representing, both brands, and that she's got 2 championships. Hashtag Becky 2 belts, which is an awesome hashtag, by the way. And she's ready to take on all comers. Out comes Lacey Evans, who we would expect to just, do a little walk and a strut and then walk away. Not this time around, though. She actually walks down, looks at Becky Lynch, looks like she's about to walk away, when boom, a straight right hook to Becky Lynch's face, just sets off the champion. Lacey tries to walk away. Excuse me. And Becky Lynch goes after Lacey Evans. She tries to lock in and disarm her. Lacey Evans is able to get out. And we may have a feud between these two in the future. Honestly, it's kind of cool. Bobby Roode and Chad Gable lost to Ricochet and Aleister Black. They're also talking about making a statement or having a new attitude, something like that. They're getting a little bit heelish now. Honestly, I would have preferred Bobby Roode to just turn heel and have Gable as a face, but that's just my opinion because, well, what do I know? Lashley beats down on Dean Ambrose on his final night in WWE. Thank you, Dean, for everything that you've done. And I know that he deserved a lot better. I will say this, that there was actually a post-Raw deal in which Seth Rollins comes out. He basically talks about Dean Ambrose. He brings out Roman Reigns, and they kind of, talk about how Dean Ambrose definitely put the two of them on the map. Because if there was no Shield, there probably wouldn't be a Rollins or Reigns. Basically, we see them do their triple, the fist deal in the center. They basically end it with that. Sorry about that. I got a little bit distracted for a minute there. Then we had the return of Sami Zayn. Basically, he came out, issued an open challenge. Out came Finn Balor, who put the Intercontinental title on the line against Sami Zayn in what was a really good matchup between the two of them. Finn was able to beat Sami Zayn with the coup de grace for the victory. And then we get heel Sami Zayn, which is honestly the best Sami Zayn. He basically talks about, he kind of picks up where he left off as a heel beforehand, where he basically is bashing the fans. He's basically just, saying that he doesn't need them and blah, 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 everything like that. And he kind of does the same thing on SmackDown, but on SmackDown he kind of does a deal where he just has the microphone, he's listening to the crowd sing his theme song, and then he's just like, you ain't worth my time. So, heel Sami Zayn, Dick Sami Zayn is the best Sami Zayn at this point. Absolutely loved it. We had Elias come out, and he hoped to finish off the concert that he had last night at WrestleMania. I definitely need to incorporate this because I did not mention it during the WrestleMania deal. Elias actually had a really cool deal in which he had himself, and himself. One of himselves was in the ring, and the other two were on the screen. He was playing piano, he was playing the drums, he was playing guitar. It was just one of those things where they timed that out so well. It was really cool. Then out came John Cena, who basically did a whole Doctor of Thugonomics deal, hit the AA on Elias to really shock the crowd, but also help the crowd go home happy, I guess you could say. And Elias basically says on this edition of Raw, where he says, if anybody interrupts me, they are a dead man. Out comes The Undertaker. Undertaker just comes out. He gets in the ring. Elias is at first kind of shaken by this. He's just about to leave, but then he gets back in the ring. And we get kind of like this unique Mexican standoff deal where it's kind of like Elias takes a couple steps forward, Undertaker takes a couple steps forward, and then Elias, and then Undertaker. And then finally Elias is like, yeah, no, I don't think I'm going to do this. So he's about to leave, but then he goes to attack the Undertaker. Undertaker hits a big boot, a choke slam, and then the tombstone. Undertaker definitely makes the crowd go home happy. Ooh, it was great. Now we get into the part where the shit hits the fan. So, Seth Rollins versus Kofi Kingston in a winner-take-all matchup. It started off pretty good. They definitely were kind of doing a deal where they one-upped each other, where they kind of just really made for a really good matchup. And it looked like Kofi was going to have some advantages, but then out came the Bar. The Bar came out, and we see them being down Kofi, Seth Rollins, he gets involved, and they kind of get the they get the Bar out of the ring, and then Seth Rollins just says, hey, let's have a tag team match. And the fans were not having any of it. If they would have done a deal where they had both of them as fighting champions saying like, hey, we'll take on anybody. We'll do an open challenge for the WWE Universal and the WWE title. That would have been acceptable. Unfortunately, that's not what they did. They decided to do a deal where it's like, hey, winner take all, winner take all. And they put in the Bar. Reasons why? I don't know. On SmackDown, they made it seem like, oh, well, we saved you. We deserve something for this, blah, blah, blah. Makes no sense. Seth Rollins and Kofi win. That's Raw. That was rough, to say the least. I can't believe that they did that. They had Brooklyn in the palm of their hand, and they just spat in their face with that ending. It made no sense. It proved nothing, and it made WWE look like a bunch of dicks. I guess that's what they want to be known as. SmackDown, we kicked off with the New Day celebration. We had Xavier Woods kind of tell a personal story about how he watched Kofi Kingston when he debuted, and then you kind of see him kind of evolve. And then when he came to WWE, that Kofi was one of the nicest guys to help him out. It was just a really cool deal. Big E kind of talks about everything that they've went through and that they've kind of changed the landscape of the WWE. And then out came the Bar, like I said, to just basically say, hey, you owe us, and blah, 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 blah. And they said, hey, let's have a 6-man tag, in which the crowd was just like, great, another tag team main event for no reason. And Big E kind of pointed out the obvious. He said, well, you have to remember that, there's 3 of us and only 2 of you, so who could you possibly have gotten? Sheamus and Cesaro said, well, when we went over to Raw, we kind of made a friend. And he's going to be our tag team partner tonight. And it would turn out to be the Scottish psychopath, Drew McIntyre. All you need to know for this matchup is that the New Day win. This match just proved nothing. But the first matchup on the card was actually Mustafa Ali, Ricochet, and Aleister Black against Andrade, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Rusev, in which Team Babyface won. I think that's really all you need to know. Braun Strowman came to attack Samoa Joe after Joe attacked R-Truth, locking him in the Coquina Clutch, and basically saying, hey, I decimated Rey Mysterio at WrestleMania, and I could probably do it in less time, depending on, no matter who comes out comes Braun to accept the challenge. It was one of those things where it was like, they're building up to something big between the two of them. Maybe it's going to happen at, Money in the Bank. Maybe it's going to be something else. Who knows? I think that Braun is definitely bound for SmackDown in this Superstar Shakeup. That's the only thing I know. As far as anything else goes, I don't have the slightest clue. We had the Iconics defeat the Brooklyn Bells to retain their tag team titles. It was a enjoyable matchup. The finisher that they had, oh my gosh, that was good. I think it was, I think Billie Kay had one of the women in this kind of like half Nelson-like position, and then Peyton Royce hit the knee to the face of her for the finish. I was legitimately like, wow, they created an awesome tag team move. I'm totally okay with this. Paige was watching backstage. She says that she's definitely going to shake up the women's division next week when she introduces a tag team of her own. Whew, I can only imagine who that could be. Shane McMahon came out basically to talk about WrestleMania and everything like that, but not until he called Greg Hamilton into the ring, in which he basically said, "Oh, you're not doing my intro right. Do it right. Do it right." And instead of like slapping him or something like that, he grabs him by the tie, and he's actually kind of like dragging him up the rampway, up to the top, up towards the top, and basically stating that, you know, if you don't do it right, then there's going to be serious repercussions. Finally, Greg Hamilton gets it done. I feel bad for the guy. And literally, this is really where it gets weird, because Daniel Bryan gets in trouble for, you know, using a tie as a weapon on Justin Roberts. He gets fired. So Shane kind of does the same thing, and they turn a blind eye. Okay then. Just, this doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. We had the Usos taking on the Hardy Boys in what was a really good matchup for these two. It was hyped up as like the dream match between the two brother teams, and it definitely delivered. The Hardy Boys won, to shock a lot of people, and just as they were about to be interviewed by, I think it was Dasha, which I want to actually touch base on that a little bit after I talk about SmackDown. Basically, what ends up happening is that she's getting in the ring. She's about ready to interview them. Lars Sullivan comes out and attacks the Hardy Boys. So Lars Sullivan makes another impact on another big show, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. You know, what happens going into the Superstar Shakeup? Is he going to Raw? Is he going to SmackDown? I think that with Braun going to SmackDown, I would put Lars on Raw, to be honest. That's just my opinion. Alright, so one more thing to talk about before we get into the whole Dasha deal. Becky Lynch talks about the fact that, you know, Lacey Evans attacked her and that she realizes that she's a marked man, but she also realizes that that comes with the territory and that she's going to fight anybody for the championship belts. Hashtag Becky 2 belts. There we go. She goes up the ramp. Lacey Evans attacks her, and it's kind of progressing the storyline between the two of them. So I think that we're going to get Lacey Evans versus Becky Lynch at Money in the Bank. Either that, or they're going to have Lacey in the women's Money in the Bank ladder match. Either way, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing where this goes. Like I said, I already talked about the main event, so I want to close this edition of Pro Talk Wrestling talking about the release of Dasha. So apparently, earlier today, there was a report that leaked out that Dasha had been released from the WWE, which is weird because she was, I believe, I think she was doing interviews last night, if I'm not mistaken. And then next thing you know, she's gone. So it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, huh, well, that's kind of weird. So something had to have happened. But there's also somebody who made a comment, basically said, well, here comes that wonderful time of year where they just, you know, cut the fat out of WWE. And I did forget about that, is that there's a lot of times where WWE likes to do that deal where they pick a time and that's where they kind of release a lot of stars. I think with so many people on the rosters, they're going to have to let go of some people. I think that I do believe that Gallows and Anderson are on their way out, so that's going to trim it down a little bit. Gosh, I almost want to say Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel are going to be on the chopping block. because they're not really doing anything with them. I'm surprised that Slater has been around for so long, but he's very entertaining. He's fun. Not really much I can really say bad about Slater. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see what comes in the forthcoming weeks, because the Superstar Shakeup is next week. It'll be taking place in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. So, Mr. Fretz, you have yourself a wonderful event coming your way, as well as you, Miss Danny. So, this is going to be very interesting to see what the hell happens. It's going to be interesting to see, who gets picked up, who gets rotated, who gets, cut. It is going to be a Superstar Shakeup, to say the least. So, yeah, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Pro Talk Wrestling, guys. You know how to follow me on Twitter. You know how to subscribe to us on so many different platforms. And I would do more, but unfortunately, I'm just completely out of it right now. This cold has definitely been kicking my butt, and I should really be getting some rest. So, for everybody here at the Game Changer, I've been NateFNGreat. Be sure to check out our wonderful, our wonderful booth that will be happening. Well, that will be at HCW Water City WrestleCon. It's going to be awesome. It's going to feature myself, as well as Max, Agent Cooper, as well as Taylor from Taylor Talks on YouTube. It's going to be a can't miss event. And guys, you might be surprised to see who we might also have on the show while we broadcast. So with that, I'm going to head off and probably crash somewhere. So thank you guys. Have a good one. Talk to you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.